Welcome to episode 2 of One Question, where we explore the elephant in the room connected with the work we bring to the world. These conversations are about the misperceptions people have with our work, sometimes from the conversations we have in our own head, what we've been taught, or societal norms. I'm your host, Stephanie McAuliffe, an energy alchemist and boundary strategist and founder of The Way of the Diamond Warrior. I guide leaders to build a business that's a reflection of their soul's calling. Today, we're joined by Lisa Richer, a co-author of Confident You, The Raw Conversations. Lisa is a neurodivergent success partner who helps families move from paralysis to empowerment through her clarity, confidence, courage journey map. For over 2 decades, Lisa has been engaging with students, athletes, and professionals to prove that seeking support isn't a weakness. It's the ultimate foundation for success. Welcome, Lisa. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I didn't know it was a second. I love it. It's so exciting. I had so much fun with you getting that book up and going. And so I'm super happy to be here with you.
Awesome. So tell us more about the work you do and what is the elephant in the room, the misperception you would like to take a bite out of today regarding this important work that you bring to the world?
Oh, okay. So let's see. Lots I could talk about, but I know we only have so much time. So um, when I think about the work I do, I bridge the gap and connect the dots for others. And a world where I don't think like other people thought. So, helping parents navigate the neurodiverse learning journey, helping parents and the coaches navigate their child's athletic, and oftentimes helping parents navigate life themselves, because many of us grew up in a world where we might have thought differently, but we were not appreciated for those differences. That is the elephant in the room. And that for me is what I put on the table. I call it the moose on the table when we talked about taking the elephant in the room and having that difficult conversation that no one wants to have, but we really need to be having. And so that's the work that I do in those 3 domains, because I've lived as an athlete, as a parent, as a professional, as a student in a world that didn't understand me. The misperception of me as an individual was so vast and varied. I lost myself. I went into burnout. Talk about that a little bit in my book, in my book chapter. Um, so the work I do helps others figure out those unknown unknowns and guide them forward in those 3 domains, whether it's from schooling, athletics, or in the professional world.
So, do you think that because in older generations, and I grew up with this as well, there was the expectation that you were going to conform to the family's rules of what we could talk about, what we could do, how we could act, even our careers. Do you think that this wave of being seen as neurodivergence is actually us not wanting to conform to the old rules of society and family?
That's a really interesting way to ask that question. Um, I say no. Neurodivergence has always been here. We just didn't know what we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the same time, those expectations to conform, those societal norms, the do as I say, not as I do, the follow the rule, even if it doesn't make sense to you, don't question me, just do it anyway. That's where the rubber meets the road. Those are the things that for me threw me into survival mode for most of my life, whether it was in my house, whether it was in the gym. Although in the gym, when I was training as an elite level gymnast, that's where I felt most myself. And it was because I had the freedom to think differently as long as I was doing what I needed to do in my routine and the outcomes were what they needed to be. But the problem was the way people would share information with me wasn't necessarily making sense.
Mhm.
I also had neurodifferences with my visual processing that I didn't know about till I was an adult, which made it so much harder for me to do the same things that my teammates were doing. And I would get frustrated. I might get injured. My coaches would get mad, but it was because they didn't know. So I think it's less about the not wanting to conform and more about the understanding of what the neurodiversity umbrella really is,
Mhm.
that everybody falls under that umbrella, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, you're under it. And what is neurotypical is what society deems so. And so the older generations, like you were saying, yeah, those expectations to conform. I was the fixer in my house, but what I've learned as an adult is I should never have been put in that position to be the fixer. But I think it was partly because I did think differently and I didn't get attached to the outcomes. I focused on the middle and the oddities that brought people to a place. But people just thought it was so confusing and weird that that's how I thought. And so they would dismiss it. They would get combative. They would tell me to go fix something, but they wouldn't listen to me. But I think it was more because they didn't understand me. And that is really the elephant in the room, I think, across society is when you don't understand something, you either defer it, deflect it, deny it, or ignore it.
It's so fascinating that you say that because I think we see that a lot in coaching programs as well. Some of which I've experienced. It was just follow the way that I did it and it's going to work for you. Rather than going a little bit deeper to say, what are you why and what are you struggling with? So that I can help you because the way I did it isn't necessarily going to work for you.
Yes.
And I
Can I?
saw that even in a call yesterday in a group that I'm in. And it
Uh-huh.
was really painful to watch this coach try to coach someone else in the group. And it wasn't happening. And it went on for 20 minutes.
Yeah. Coaching, in my perspective, and I don't call myself a coach. I mean, I've been a coach in many facets, even as I was a gymnastics coach. So I could just call myself a coach from just that perspective. But for me, it's about meeting people where they are and then guiding them from there. And when we don't seek to understand, instead we seek to respond, we end up in that cycle. And there's a visual that I have in my chapter of the book, and that visual I use in a training that I sometimes do um, on authenticity, at the art of and authenticity and the art of relationship building. And the visual at the top has courage. That was my word. I've talked to you about that
Mhm.
years ago, and it's been my word every year. I didn't jump on the bandwagon of getting a different word every year because to me, it made more sense to take that word and then go deeper, layer by layer, and kind of parse apart and almost make a mind map of
Mhm.
what that looked like. So I use that in some of the trainings that I do. Well, I was in this professional conversation, in this collaborative training, and a coach that was in the session looked at my visual and said, connection should be at the top, not courage. And I froze at first because that's my trigger.
Mhm.
Okay, they're going against me. Took a deep breath and I said, I appreciate your perspective. However, for me, courage is the first thing. And courage will always be at the top because if I don't have courage, then I don't have the confidence or the clarity to go and connect. So some of that is my clarity, confidence, and courage journey map.
Mhm.
People have to be in different places. Some people need confidence first to gain the courage. But in reality, if you're not courageous enough to strip away the expectation, you have to be the strong one, or you have to be, in compliance or whatever. If you're not willing to be vulnerable, and that to me comes back to courage. It may to somebody else be another word, but for me, it's courage. And it's another example of what you were just describing. I said to the guy who I was running the session for, I said, wow, that's fascinating. She coaches executives, but she wanted to change my process flow for what worked for me to fit her narrative.
Right.
And that is an elephant in the room, Stephanie, right? If we think about
Mhm.
that, and that's kind of one of the thread throughs that we're talking about here,
Yeah.
we can't conform to other people's expectations because it drives misperceptions, it drives inaccuracies, and it doesn't lead to resolution or solutions that drive us forward.
It doesn't. It leads to frustration. And then people wonder what's wrong with them of why can't I achieve this? Why can't I get this done? And I think I work with patterns, and many of the patterns we experience in our adult life stem from our experiences from our formative years.
Mhm.
And growing up in a household where you're not seen for who you are,
Yeah.
where you may be considered the black sheep, the odd one out, whatever. There's all kinds of labels. I own them as well. If we were seeking approval from our parents, which we do, for who we are and didn't receive that, we can sometimes get into that same pattern with the people we work with the coaches we hire, with the jobs we step into. It repeats in so many
Mhm.
ways. And I don't think we necessarily realize how deep it goes. And yet, it's one of these things that can be so insidious. We're so familiar with it. We just shrug our shoulders.
That
So
just hit me
go
so
ahead.
hard here. But go ahead, you were going to ask me something, I think. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it's with all people, with not all, I don't mean all people, but all people that are in an environment. So the subset of people that grow up in that space, like you're describing. Um, I was a people pleaser
Hmm.
for most of my life. I was living in survival
Likewise.
mode
Yeah.
for most of my life. It took burnout for me to rise from the ashes, literally, and reconnect to me as my best self to then be able to move things forward. And for understanding and owning that I am a neurodivergent individual, that I do have ADHD, that I do have CPTSD, that these things stem from things that happened in my past, that until I unpack them, I can't move forward. That's that middle. That's the middle that most people don't want to go. That's that elephant in the room that sits there so heavily. And that's, unpacking those unknown unknowns, which is something people say is like a zone of genius for me, that I can get underneath of those, but
Likewise. Yeah.
doing it in a way that people don't recognize it's happening so that the defenses and the walls don't go up. Because I've lived that life. I
Hmm.
know what it's like to put those walls up. And so sometimes people will say, here's an elephant. How can you work with people that are in athletics and in schools and in the world? Well, we're all people, and I'm doing it from the lens of neurodiversity, the lens that I not only grew up in, the lens I've only known as a parent. So then I've also only known as a professional. I've only known in my household, and I never was understood by so many people for so many years. But connecting those random pieces helped me understand myself. And now I have the courage, the clarity, and the confidence,
Hmm.
which then leads back to courage to have these conversations with you and say, I get that you might not get me, but I still hope that you'll appreciate me and help yourself think about those misperceptions.
I love this work that you're doing because every single one of us in this world has experienced trauma. Everybody can benefit from healing.
Mhm.
No one is above it. No one is unworthy of it. And I love these connections that you're making for people so that we can all thrive. So are there any, as we wrap up, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Oh gosh. I think that I'd like to share the gift that I'm going to give away because I think that's a
Perfect.
nice little thread through. So I'm going to gift anybody that is interested in learning more about how I ended up where I am and maybe even seeing some of themselves in it or having some of those aha moments, whether you're male or female. But my chapter is called Unbecoming to Become, Finding Clarity in the Chaos. And it's the 12th chapter in the book that Stephanie and I were, I'm grateful that we were able to be co authors in. And that's my gift to others that are listening that want to hear more or know more. Um, get to know yourself. That would be the one thing I would say is get to know yourself and be willing to not just recognize the elephant in the room, but talk about it, put the moose on the table and
Mhm.
take it from name it and tame it to transform it. Because if we're not going to communicate about it and we're not going to teach others about it, and you will find your people. So
Always.
everybody is not going to allow that conversation to happen. And that's okay. Just say next and
Mhm.
move forward.
I love it. Yes, awareness marks the beginning.
Oh, I love that.
Awareness marks the beginning. Yes. So, Lisa, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. The link for folks will be down in the notes so they can get the chapter in the book. And thank you for being a part of One Question and our elephant in the room.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.